in the previous trailer, Alice Davis says Walt would always challenge us to do things that we never knew we could do before. So I'd like to ask you guys, what was your sort of big break, or for lack of a better word, your transformative moment that you had in your career at WED, where you thought, I'm finally doing something I've never done before. You're feeling a little scared, you feel like the reins are off, you can actually go and have your own voice, and your own creative spirit is starting to shine now. When did that all start to happen for you? What was that moment or series of moments where you really were coming into your own as Imagineers? And we'll start, well actually I want to start with Marty.
Oh my goodness. You know, I really can't pick a time, because the thing that impressed me the most was all the people that Tony and Kevin talked about, and Kim. They were so giving. If you wanted to know anything about how they did something or what their experience was, they would take the time to teach you. It was like taking a master's class all the time. I mean, Harper Cobb and Blaine Gibson and Rolly Crump and John Hinch and Herb Ryman and Mark Davis and George Kimball, and you know, and they were all there available to you. So, and they accepted you. The fact that you were much younger than they, because most of them had started with Walt in the 30s, the fact that you were much younger didn't mean anything. If you were assigned to their project, you were on the team, and they accepted you, and they gave you as much work to do and confidence that you could do it as they would somebody who they had worked with for 30 years or so. And I've never forgotten that, and as the leader of Imagineering, I tried to reflect that, because you develop a trust with people when you do that, and a passion for knowing more, because they were so giving. And I really can't put it in any other way except that that was a blessing, and I hope that that continues forever, because that's how we pass on the things that we know, the things that we've done to a new generation that can take it beyond what we did.
Great. Tony, tell us about what you think was your big sort of first opportunity and moment.
Well, I'd have to break it down, because there were steps, you know. When I started, it was about what you were doing. Occasionally I would vacuum the model of Walt Disney World. So I know that job well. I know how to cut with a mat knife very well. Even my finger cutting it out very well. But I think it would have to be, the first one would be Big Thunder. And taking Big Thunder from, you know, when I came back from Walt Disney World, I worked on it as a model builder, as a way to preserve my job and not find myself out of work. And everyone started coming around saying, have you seen that model out back? It really looks good, you know. And so then the next thing I began doing renderings of the things you'd see inside. And all of a sudden I found myself being brought into meetings about the design of it instead of about the building of the model. And then we got heavily involved in Epcot. And after about 2 attempts to do pavilions and not finding sponsors, a wonderful opportunity came up for me to go to Disneyland and actually work with Fred Turger, who was my partner in the model shop for so many years right next door, and kind of shadow him in building something down there, which was an amazing opportunity, because, you know, every minute of that you were learning something, but at the same time it was a project that I knew from when it was a little 20 scale play model, and then when it was a 1/4-inch model, and then when we made it into an inch model. And now, I remember bringing my dad out there as they lifted the top on that and putting it on, going, I can't believe this is happening. So that was very transformative for me in terms of seeing myself in a different way. And then the two that I would partner together was Star Tours, being kind of revolutionary and breaking all the rules for Disney. And Marty and I were talking about this the other day about, you know, really worried about you folks and what you're going to think about bringing some mythology that wasn't Walt Disney's mythology, but now that we know Georgia, we knew he grew up on it as much as we all did, and the DNA is all there, and Luke and Lee and Han. So that was good, but I felt so nervous about it that the opportunity to do Fantasyland and renew my faith in being able to do traditional Disney kind of counterbalanced that. So I had those two things going, and I think it was a great kind of balancing act in the 80s there to have those two. One that was revolutionary, the other was sort of a proof to myself that, you know, could I do something that was in the vein of what Walt had done so beautifully originally? Could we take it to the next step? So those two were a calming and a frightening force, if you will, in transforming me again. And I think they all prepared me for what was probably the best opportunity I had in my life, which was when Marty and Randy asked me to take the lead creatively in Paris. And going into a different culture, which was incredibly enjoyable, but understanding it and trying to make the adjustments. And then because I was a Disneyland kid, and so were all the 4 or 5 people that we had on that project as leaders of each land, Tom Morris was one of them, who did Fantasyland and the Beautiful Castle. We all knew what was right about Disneyland and what we loved about it. And we were able, I think, even with all the new requirements for capacity and whatnot, we were able to keep in Disneyland Paris what I consider the DNA of Disneyland. So those of you who've been there, you probably recognize that too, that when you walk into those streets and you cross the small spaces and you find the multitude of things to do, you find something that's far more akin to Disneyland than it is to some of our larger, more spectacular things. But it is, in my feeling, I've given each of the parks a handle. I think that Disneyland is going to forever be the most charming park ever done. I think we'll, yeah. And I think Walt Disney World is spectacular, and I think that Disneyland Paris is the most beautiful park that we ever did.